that's even better. Three, 3 hours after you land in Japan, the earthquake hits. That never happens to me.
Then you really ought to go on vacation with me.
Yeah.
It seems like disaster seems to follow.
Seriously, the whole country started to self-destruct after you got there. And now, so did was it seconds, or did you hesitate at all before the journalist Hagit kicked in, or I mean, was it I gotta save my life here for a minute, and then the journalist kicked in, or walk us through this?
So we were sitting around a big conference room table. You can't hear?
We have some sound issues.
I will try to project a little more. We were sitting around a conference room table talking to military commanders when the quake hits. And there were 6 of us there. And the whole meeting was supposed to be about the U.S.-Japan military alliance, which is a fascinating topic, really. But when the cell phones started going off of these military commanders and they started excusing themselves to go out of the room, while I was fascinated by the military alliance conversation, there was just no way I couldn't, the curiosity got the best of me.
You knew something else was cooking.
So I went outside and I saw the commander of the Marines actually on the phone, and I heard him saying, okay, we're going to start evacuating the beaches. And I'm thinking, okay. So I just took out my notepad and started taking notes. Now, I think in the United States, there's no way a journalist would have had this sort of access. It was just this unusual situation. So he saw me taking notes. He was fine with it. When he got off the phone, I said, okay, obviously we're in an emergency. Who can I talk to who is an expert? So right away, I started looking for contacts I could interview, not depending on the AP or anyone else. I wanted to do
wait
my
for a
own
press
reporting.
conference.
Exactly,
Right.
I wanted to do my own reporting. And he did have an expert there, an oceanographer. He took me into this room, and the oceanographer started explaining how the earthquake works. What I ended up writing a story about the anatomy of an earthquake later. But while we were there, I look up on these huge screens, and there's a huge wave that is headed. It's out at sea. They had helicopters up. They had satellite shots. They had helicopters up. The tsunami had not hit yet.
So you're watching this. You had felt the quake. Did you
Yes.
know that this was as big a quake as it was?
Initially, I did not.
Okay.
Because when I'd been there 5 days. I'd been in Japan for 5 days, and in that time there had been one quake, which was like a 6.2, which was like a sneeze to them, and then there were some aftershocks. This day we left Tokyo and flew to Okinawa. If I had been in Tokyo, yes, I would have known the severity. But considering I was south, it felt no more where we were. However, once the phone started going off, and I realized this was a much bigger earthquake. And in fact, they were still adjusting the earthquake. At first they thought it was a 7.9. They kept adjusting it up. But at this moment, when I was sitting in that room, looking at this huge wave come in, and it was offshore, and it was surreal. I describe it in some of the, Skype reports that I did, that it was like watching a disaster movie. You know those meteor movies that you watch, and they cut away from the drama, the human drama, to this meteor, and it's slowly moving in, and then they cut away to the
and then
drama.
back to Bruce Willis.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, this was like watching one of those. I mean, it was like this wave slowly moving in.
Did you have this thought? I am a dead woman.
No.
You didn't.
No, I didn't. I was where I was. I knew that I would be safe. And also, they would not have let me be there at that point. And they were evacuating the beaches. Where I was away from that area.
Okay.
It was inland from that area. So no, I never feared for my safety.
Now, one of the things I'm intrigued about is some of the means that you used in reporting. I mean, I watched some of your Skype reports and read your Twitter feeds and saw some of the other things you were posting. How soon did you start doing that? I mean, you took notes obviously when you started realizing this was a big deal, but you also immediately started posting things.
Yes, I would say my first tweet. I mean, this this kind of shows you right here. I went from a sushi stand picture, because I thought I was on, basically a little tourism trip.
Yeah, in fact, if you read her earlier stuff, getting on a plane, the usual Twitter crap, and she, she's doing all this.
Which is my specialty.
Yeah,
Twitter crap.
I mean, she's doing all this, and then pretty soon, earthquake, and I mean, this suddenly takes this ominous
Yes.
turn.
And so this is the first tweet, and unfortunately, I don't have the time right on this particular one, but this is the first tweet where I said, biggest quake yet to hit. People ran out of buildings, cars toppled off bridges, we are all okay. And then you can see I was in Okinawa. There was a 2-hour delay in Okinawa for the tsunami to hit. It hit within a half hour further north where the devastation took place that you've all seen the video. But where I was, we had time, so they were evacuating the beaches. I started tweeting immediately, and as you can see, a friend of mine right away said, hey, can you do, he contacted me right away, this is the public, he sent me a personal message, can you do something for us? So right away, my friends who are journalists around the country started saying, can you report for us? And so what I did right away was...
Did you send them a contract first?
Yeah, if only I had been a freelancer, I could have really cleaned up. As it was, my company ended up making a lot of money on this, which will come later. But besides the tweets and besides the Facebook, let me see if this will come up here. I apologize, I've got a little delay. So besides the Facebook postings that I made, I also started sending back copy paragraph by paragraph. I called my station. So here's some of the Facebook. If anyone's up, I'm going to be on WGN in 2 hours. Of course, it was the middle of the night in the United States at that point when this hit. So I started to send back some things to my station, and initially did phoner reports.
Yeah, I was going to say, is this all by your smartphone or something?
Yes, I covered this thing using. I put it away so that it wouldn't ring. I covered this quake using this. And here's what I would like to say is that I've been going around the country for like 2 or 3 years now, preaching this gospel of the future of journalism. But I don't think that I fully understood it.
This is my tool. That's yours.
Yeah.
There's the difference between you and me, Hagit, right here.
Yeah. I didn't fully understand it until I realized that you don't need anymore all of the gear, because I had a 15-kilogram restriction as to what I could carry. So I couldn't carry a camera and a tripod. The tripod by itself would just about exceed it. And the batteries and the battery chargers, those just are very weighty. There's just no way to cover and to be light and nimble anymore. But you can use a phone now, and you can not only take the pictures and the video and type your script, you can Skype, you can do everything on one device. I'm not saying this is the best one. I mean, there are technical wizards who will tell you the iPad is better or something else, and whatever tool you use is fine. But the bottom line is you don't need all of the gear that you used to. But what do you do to distinguish yourself? I'm a local reporter, and there are folks from the networks covering at the disaster scene. So what am I going to do? Because I'm not at the disaster scene. So I basically found angles that nobody else would cover.
Like what?
Like, for example, let me find this guy. Like this. Like when we went to Hiroshima, I interviewed this guy. He was a survivor of the bomb that we dropped. And Keijiro Matsushima remembers the day the whole world turned to night. In a flash of fire and blast of shock, his town obliterated before his eyes. It was August 6, 1945. Now, his eyes turned north toward the Fukushima nuclear plant. And from then on, I went to the news of the day. But I told the story through someone who had experienced a nuclear disaster, lived, and now was looking at a man-made version, a nature-made version of what he had experienced that man had wrought.
So you did two things there, though. One, you put a human face on this disaster, but you also provided context.
Yes.
So you provided this 50 or 60-year context for something, and that's good storytelling.
You know what I really grew to love out of this entire experience? I'm a broadcast reporter. I usually get, for spot news, a minute 15, a minute and a half. There's no time to write. The writing that, you loved, that maybe got you in the business in the first place, that started for me when I was a kid, writing poetry. I
Yeah,
don't get to write poetry anymore.
Yeah, and this is the reason why you got into this world,
Exactly.
it was to write.
So what you get to do now is you get to stretch yourself, and you get to to use more of your journalistic muscle than I used to be able to do just doing broadcasting. Now, I'm not turning my back on broadcasting. I love what I do for a living. But this is an opportunity for me to do more. Not only to do the broadcast report, the Skype report, which I could, pull up the Skypes, but also to do some nicer writing, some more creative writing. And the story that I just showed you got picked up. That was the one that probably got picked up the most. It was in the Charlotte Observer. It was in the St. Pete Times. It was
Right.
all over the United States, which is another point that I would like to make to all of you. You want to be a valuable employee to your company. And so this was an opportunity not only for me to stretch as a reporter, but to show my company that I am valuable beyond my one television station that I work for. And they were able to sell this to a lot of places, and they didn't tell me how much they made. I don't know if they will. I'd like to know. But the bottom line is that my company views me somewhat differently
Right.
now.